Gotcha. Yeah, well, the only thing you left off is, with the picture, usually the strong resemblance to Chris Hemsworth, but I'll go with that. Okay, so my name is Brian Johnson. You just heard about me. I'm actually not a lot more interesting than that, but I'll do my best. So I've been with Epri now for 13 years. I've been essentially handling all of our talent acquisition now in my team for that entire period of time. We're actually about 1,300. So I know that 2,000 number pops up on the web, but it's off a little bit. We're about 1,300 employees. And it's been amazing in my tenure with this organization. When I started, we were about 550. When I started, we had 3 main offices in the US. So Palo Alto, which is our headquarters, Knoxville, Tennessee, and Charlotte, North Carolina, which is actually our largest location. What a lot of people don't realize, when Houston is to oil and gas, Charlotte is to electricity. A very strong industry presence there. I'll talk about that in a couple of spots as they go along. But large, offices in the US, we've always had that. But today we have offices in Dublin, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Tokyo, Seoul, Singapore. A lot of international growth. I think when I joined 13 years ago, it was probably, 45 international employees, and I think we're at about 150 now. And that international growth has grown as part of what we do. When I joined, about 10% of our funding came from outside the United States. 13 years later, 40%. So we're a far more international organization. Global. Getting to be a true international organization, or think about it, we're an international organization moving towards being global. That's a journey unto itself. How does the culture of a company become truly global? So what do? We're unique. We're very interesting, in my opinion. Well, we were established as a not-for-profit about 53 years ago to serve as a research and development collaborative in the electric power industry. By the way, do we have anybody on?
Yes, we do.
Okay, can people on web hear me?
Yeah, there's 2.
Okay, you can say something. So we got, we were established to be the research and development collaborative for the electric power industry. So we do work today in nuclear power, fossil power, renewable energy, the power grid, all the way through end use. I'll talk about what that means. So nuclear power, everything that's going on within a nuclear power plant. How do we design the fuel? All the operations stuff, the safety stuff, the pumps, the valves, very mundane, but really important. All the way through, what do we do with that fuel when we take it out of the reactor? How do we use coal better? We're using a lot less coal, and that's going to keep going. But we're using more natural gas. How can we get more efficient with that? By the way, we can take and produce, when we have extra renewable power, we can very easily produce hydrogen. Well, if I can blend 15% hydrogen into my natural gas, and by the way, I can, without damaging any of the equipment in that power plant, and now I've reduced my carbon by 15%. How do we adopt these new technologies and new approaches? By the way, if I'm going to build a gas power plant today, it's going to be able to take 50% hydrogen. That's coming. So how do we get greener and smarter about our fossil fuels, but then renewable? Wind, solar, hydropower, adopting new technology. The grid, transmission, the really big lines to the substation, then the distribution to your house. We heard about, kind of the introduction to Epri was cybersecurity, big part of it. Well, the grid is something we hear a lot about. Our substations safe, and we protect stuff. But I'll tell you what, it's growing in other parts, like power generation, 10 years ago, I didn't worry about cybersecurity in a power plant because it was stupid. It was analog. I walked in, there was nothing digital. That's changing rapidly. So if I'm now monitoring this equipment and starting to control this equipment using digital technology, now cybersecurity is concerned. So now we're looking at cybersecurity, inside a fossil plant. Renewable. Where are a lot of our renewables? Anybody ever seen a wind turbine? Where was it? New Jersey? Okay, we're crowded in New Jersey. But where do we see a lot of them? Middle of nowhere, Iowa. That's not where the users are, but that's where we can generate the wind power. I got one guy driving around in a truck, pretty much making sure nothing fell down. He can't monitor all this equipment. So now my renewables, which are in very remote locations, all being monitored, all being controlled from 500 miles away. Cybersecurity is now a concern there too. Then we're looking at all those issues into end use. How are we going to charge EVs? By the way, I'm not really concerned about the Tesla parked in somebody's driveway. That's kind of easy. What if UPS comes in and says, we want to do the same thing Amazon did. We want to take all of our electric vehicles or all of our delivery trucks and make them electric. That's when your utility is coming to Epri saying, how are we going to do this? And that's a lot of power density. It's a lot of demand. How am I going to deal with the logistics of planning for this? And also the infrastructure of getting that power where it needs to be. And whether it's UPS, FedEx, your local school board that says we want to take all of our diesel buses and turn them into electric. That stuff is happening. Probably the most glaring example is data centers. In this country, we've had flat demand for about 3 decades. We've been using kind of the same amount of electricity for a very long time. And our grid can handle it, not all the generation capacity we needed, but about 5, 6, 7 years ago, all of a sudden, got more EVs. You're using more electricity in your house. Now I got data centers. I don't know if anybody's heard of people talk about a lot. AI. Does it come up here occasionally? That's going to take that data center demand and just take it to them. And everybody's trying to figure out how we're going to deal with it. We actually have a whole research program called DC Flex, which is working with the hyperscalers and the Amazons of the world and Microsoft. There's a lot of potential solutions, but we got to figure out how we can make them work. Did anybody read anything probably about 6 months ago, what Microsoft did up in Pennsylvania for their plan to power one of their very, very large data centers? Okay, 3 Mile Island nuclear plant. There were 3 power plants there. I grew up about 10 miles away from there. So in 1974, I think it was, one of them had a problem and has been closed down ever since. One of them they closed down about 8 years ago because you weren't seeing a lot of demand. There was a lot of natural gas in Pennsylvania. So they said, we don't really need this nuclear power. They shut it down. Microsoft went to the utility that owned it and said, okay, we're going to give you, I believe it was $16 billion, turn that plant back on. And we're going to buy all of the electricity for the next 20 years. All told, I think we're talking about a $40 billion investment to power the data center. Great for Microsoft for that location, but that's not going to be available anymore. So small modular reactors is something that Amazon is looking at. Apple heavily invested in renewables. We're kind of in that all of the above strategy, but at the end of the day, it's still going to require the grid. So we're helping the industry and those users figure out how we're going to do it. So that's it. We're pretty much everything from the power plant to plugging the house. We're helping figure out how to do it safer, more affordably, more efficiently, and with less environmental. That's our mission. So, by the way, about $500 million a year in funding. That primarily comes from about 250 utilities all over the world. But now we've got people like Google and Tesla and Amazon that are actually starting to come to us and fund the work we're doing because those end users are seeing a lot of value in our research. So things are changing, but we're still at our core, not for profit, here for public good, and we want to impact the world. So it's like a cool place to work. We got labs that do really amazing stuff. Some of them scare the hell out of me. But at the same time, we're doing it for a really good cause. So, IT, that's my audience. Well, we got really brilliant researchers. And at the end of their research, by the way, sometimes that research is years, and sometimes it never really ends. But they're synthesizing knowledge that the industry is going to need. Now, I'm a guy who's going to walk out into the field and use that. Do I really want to take this research guy's 85-page white paper, all kinds of really cool data and graphs and formulas in it, and my TI-84 calculator? Do you still use TI-84 calculators? I don't know. Okay, showing my age. And go out and try to figure it out? No, I want to grab my iPad. And somebody in this room has the skills to take all of that research and develop an application. So now I go out in the field and I start taking readings. And the application on my iPad is going to say, hey, based on everything Epri has shared with us, this is what you need to go do next. You know, maybe it's take more readings. Maybe it's, listen, looks like your problem is here, but you have a safety issue. You have to power down that line before you can work on it. So it's keeping people safe from taking that research. So we have a lot of people that do application development. We have our own IT needs, and those are growing. So we have a CIO, and that person's organization is making sure that all of our researchers, and by the way, some of their demands are rather extensive, are being met. We have NVIDIA. Now, we have NVIDIA equipment. One, because we need it, probably couldn't afford it, but NVIDIA has actually given us that equipment so we can also test it for energy efficiency, which, by the way, I thought was another mind-blowing statistic. The demand for data center power is growing. But if I look at an NVIDIA chip from 6 years ago to today, it is 95% more energy efficient today than it was 5, 6, 7 years ago. So this thing is only using 5% of the power, but the demand is still going through the roof. That's extraordinary. So,
and just to piggyback on that, Dr. Kafori, the understudy of Dr. Jorge, he is now working with NVIDIA as one of the top 3 researchers in the world, and he's figured out a way to speed up their processors by 100 times their current rate. So what's happening is, if you guys want to work with Dr. Kafori, who's across the hall, or Dr. Prashigno to secure all this, things are happening right across the hallway in our program. Okay.
it's moving at a pace that is hard to comprehend. So yes, software development, that's kind of old school. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, that's really important. We develop knowledge, but we got to make it into something usable. That's what our members, the utilities, want and need. So we do a lot of that. We have our own in-house stuff. Our needs there can get fairly complex. But, it all started, really, this conversation started about 2 years ago. And I will try to only use the term this one time because I hate the term AI. So AI is nothing But machine learning, large language models, natural language processing, yes, in a couple of years, agentic. And maybe a couple of years is being pessimistic. I always joke agentic is when Arnold Schwarzenegger starts kicking down the door looking for Sarah Connor. But, come on. Listen, none of those things are new. We've been using machine learning for a long time. Natural language processing, Epri has a lot of experience. The capabilities that are coming, the new technologies, the new chips, it's just functioning in ways that there's capabilities that are at a new level. So, we've got a lot of brilliant researchers who are using AI as a tool for us. So we have to support them in their needs to make sure that we're a co-pilot shop. Co-pilot's doing everything we need it to. So, whether they're working in natural language processing or machine learning, our research is going to start developing machine learning tools that are capable of detecting problems, saying we have to do maintenance, eventually actually shutting down things when there's a threat in danger. So all of our research is the backbone. Now we're not just selling a tool for, here's an app to go out in the field and do the work. We're going to be developing the machine learning products that are going to say, hey, you cannot capture, you cannot understand all the data that is coming off of your grid in real time. Until now. So now we're going to say, listen, demand is not matching the model from 12 minutes ago or 12 hours ago. We've got to make some adjustments in how we're managing power distribution. For power planning, lots and lots. I talked about we're digitizing that technology, constantly being bombarded with data. Well, that data can now become information a lot more quickly. And machine learning is going to be able to say, listen, got all this kind of cool Epri data and Epri knowledge based on what your plant equipment is telling us. We have a problem. Here's what you need to do about it. Agentic, you had a problem. Just letting you know, I already took care of it. Large language models. So our members are using ChatGPT. They love it. It's a really cool tool. But if I go to ChatGPT and I ask it, how often should I inspect a turbine blade made of tungsten steel after 750 cold starts and an average operating temperature of 1400 degrees? You might get an answer. But that answer will not include Epri data because that's proprietary. That's not in the public domain. So ChatGPT can do really cool stuff. So we got this quantity. Our members like that tool, but they need to have that tool utilizing our proprietary data to give them answers. So we're developing our own LLM. Actually, new term for me a couple months ago, a small language model. You might have heard that one. It's an LLM, but much more targeted, built for very specific use applications. So we're building out this small language model. So our members become inside our proprietary firewall, use a tool that they're comfortable with, want to use, and access all of it. Well, we got to be careful. Has anyone here ever experienced a hallucination with AI? Not one. I have. I'm not a big user. There. My wife. So I have a 14. who is really, really into Pokemon cards. So a couple of months ago, maybe about a year ago, I said, okay, I'll do this stuff with you. But we're gonna do sports cards together too. So I was digging around, I opened up a pack, 1994 football cards, and I got an artist proof of a guy by the name of Dan Marino, used to be quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Great player. Pretty rare card. I sent it off to get graded, and it came back at 10. Never been graded this way before. So I'm trying to figure out what is this thing worth. And I kind of look, other players, that kind of caliber. Yeah, I figure, okay, this thing's worth about $250. My wife doesn't believe me, because apparently I'm an idiot. She goes to ChatGPT and puts in some information about this thing and says, what's it worth? It came back and said, there isn't enough data to reach a conclusion. She continued to ask the question again and again and again. And after like 4 iterations, it came back and said, $500. That was ChatGPT's version of shut up and go away. By the way, I sold it for $250. I was right. If you're looking at what Epri does and provides, when we're developing that small language model, hallucinations be a really bad thing. So if the answer is, I don't know, here endeth the lesson. I don't know. Go talk to a person. And we'll get you there. So this is, as I say again, AI, all these tools, they've been there, but we're just taking them to a new level. I got brilliant nuclear physicists. I got brilliant engineers. I got people that can understand what's going on the power grid in a way very few people in the world can. But they're not data scientists. They don't have those technology skills that are being required as part of the team, as part of the collaboration, provide and develop what the industry is going to ask us to do. So 13 years ago, when I got hired at Epri, if you said, what kind of IT people are you going to hire? I'm like, I don't know, networking guy to come in and make sure that the emails working. Probably would have been about it. Now it's in all of them. So the opportunities do exist. So logistics stuff, that's us. That's a little perspective on where IT skills can come into the organization, and it's kind of a little bit of everywhere. Who here is a senior graduating in December or this coming May? A couple hands. Obviously, that's my crowd interested in full-time positions. If you're graduating in December, probably that would be like right now. If it's in May, we're probably going to be knowing what we're going to hire and having those positions start to get posted. Probably February. For intern, for everybody else, our internships come into play. Typically, given where you guys are going to school, it's probably going to be a summer. We do have some interns typically at like a UNC Charlotte or University of Tennessee or Stanford or San Jose, where we're really close to those campuses that may come in and work for a summer and then continue to work. You can do that remote sometimes, just depends on you. But probably most of our interns are going to be looking at our summer interns. Those we will typically post in January and February. It's more of kind of the cadence of our business operating cycle. That's when my people kind of know their funding and their budgets are all locked in and they kind of know what our members are asking for. So that's when they start coming in. I do have some positions posted today because some of my managers actually listen to me and I'm telling them sooner the better. But January, February is when you will see most of that position. Occasionally, I have very stubborn people, and you will see some post in March. When they're really trying to tick me off, April. My award winner last year was the manager who called me up. And he knew he was gonna really irritate me, because he acknowledged it at the beginning of the call. It was like May 2nd. Do you think I can hire a student for the summer? I was like, probably freaking not. We found him one. And 2 weeks later, we had a student start. In his defense, he got some funding he wasn't expecting. So I get it, it happens. But for most of you guys, if you come to our website in that January, February timeframe, you're gonna see a lot of positions posted. Most of them. Charlotte is probably where this crowd is probably gonna be. So that is where most of our internships are based. I want to say last summer, across all of Epri, we were at about 70 interns. And I would probably say 50 of them are Charlotte. So we have a lot of people on for this one. Matter of fact, I'm not supposed to share everything, but there's a company that does a survey, and I think this year there were 35,000 interns surveyed. And they rank those internship programs on how satisfied and how rewarding. Epri came in fourth. I think it was industry specific, so we were in kind of the energy, renewables, utilities, oil and gas, all lumped together. Still, we're a relatively small organization, and our interns ranked us for. So it is a good experience. It is I think, an environment where you will learn a lot. So, up here on the table, there's one card that says full-time opportunities for my people graduating December, May. I grabbed that one. There's another one up here that says internship, and it will take you to our internships opportunities. You want to keep checking back, make sure you're on top of it when they post. Okay.
Put this up on the overhead so they can.
Oh, I completely forgot about okay, for anything up here that's like meaningful, I talked about that. We do have some smaller US offices, mission, I kind of talked about that. That's all the cool stuff we do. Okay, I'll make one update to this slide. And I don't know if it's relevant to everybody here. One of that great advantages is we've all, one, if you're here on an F1 or J1 type visa, absolutely. We can clearly work with somebody on an OPT. With the STEM extension for 3 years, that makes a lot of sense for us. I will tell you that with some recent changes in Washington, DC and policy, H-1Bs are going to become extremely different for us as an organization. There's now a $100,000 fee associated with requesting an H-1B, which quite frankly is beyond our need. So we're hoping we get exempted from that policy, but there's still not a lot of clarity. So for any international students in the room, we're doing our best, but we may have some headwinds that quite frankly we've never faced before. Bold internship. We were number 3, we did slip to number 4. But they doubled the number of companies they surveyed. So we went from, US nationals to the Olympic. Company website, it's all on these cards up here. And that's it. So now question, what perspective can I share with you guys that I have already?
Since obviously, your offices aren't based in South Carolina or stuff like that, have you helped people move out to North Carolina for summer, or full-time employees move out?
Full-time employees, yes. It's been a long time since I was at this point in life. So what I'm told is, one, what we pay is pretty competitive. We are 1 mile from the University of North Carolina Charlotte campus. What I'm told, there's a lot of housing available in the summer that you can, I don't know whether it's Airbnb or how they do it, but we've been told never any problem coming to Charlotte and finding very affordable housing for the summer, because somebody's always looking to sublet the place while they're out of town. So, but The story, the answer to the question is no, but it's simply because it really hasn't been an obstacle based on what. Same thing in Tennessee, if someone's really interested in Knoxville, which is a great town, you can be up there this weekend. Um, University of Tennessee is right there. I will not say the same thing about Palo Alto, California, because nothing is affordable in Palo Alto, California. It's ridiculous. Beautiful. It is, we are right on Stanford's campus. It is gorgeous. But I don't know how to afford to live out there. It's nuts. So, okay, next question. I'm not this good, folks. Trust me, give answers not there.
So what's gonna be kind of the day-to-day role of a intern?
It will depend greatly on what they're, who they're coming in to work for. If I had somebody who was coming in to Knoxville, where we actually have a cybersecurity lab. So you walk into one of our labs, we get mock-ups of what is sitting in substations around the world. And we're looking to find security breaches. We're cybersecurity, anyone, you guys familiar with red team, blue team concept? Okay. We got teams doing both sides of it. So here's a rack of servers that are running everything inside this substation. We're trying to, I got a group of guys who are trying to get in there to say, I want to shut a recloser and cause a grid problem. And I got people that are trying to figure out how do I defend that. That's hardware, it's software. If I'm up there working on that team, I'm probably bouncing in and out of that lab all day long. If I'm in Charlotte and I'm doing work with our cybersecurity work on power plants, I maybe want more modeling, getting field data. I've also got people that may be working with teams that really never go into the lab. They're just looking at huge data sets, you know, helping build models, you know, using Python or similar tools. Interesting. One of our newer areas of research, a couple of years old now, it's called climate ready. So we've got huge amounts of data about climate change. But if I'm a utility executive in Florida, and this guy here, he's a utility executive in Chicago. This guy, he's a utility executive in Seattle. Climate change is going to mean something very different for the three of us. I'm in Florida. We build our power lines to handle 120-mile-an-hour sustained wind. Historically, that's been cool, works. Maybe not 20 years from now. So climate ready saying, hey, we're not predicting the weather. No one in the history of mankind has actually done that. But hey, you know, maybe you need to start building to 150 mile an hour. Guy in Chicago, getting warmer. Yay, Chicago's too damn cold. But what does that mean? In Chicago, they get a lot of snow. Starts warming up, all of a sudden Chicago gets more ice. They don't design their power lines for snow or for ice, right? Snow's great, it's fluffy, falls off power lines, no problem. We're in the Carolinas, we know ice. That's what we get. Ice brings down power. So Chicago, we're used to winter, not the winter you're gonna have. You were Seattle, right? Hey, we rely on a lot of hydropower up there in the Pacific Northwest. We've had some droughts, historic droughts, multiple years. Maybe our ability to rely on hydropower isn't as reliable. So huge amounts of data, trying to figure out how do we build better models to localize them. So, you know, that's somebody I'm probably sitting at my desk all summer, cranking out data analysis and modeling. So, but here's what it is, isn't it? You're not getting coffee, you're not picking up somebody's dry cleaning, that's not what you turn to. At least it should. You're coming in, working with one of the world leading experts in whatever topic it is. Meaningfully supported. When someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to hire a student, and it's somebody who's never had an intern before. I ask them, what are they doing? what's your plan, man? I don't know. Yeah, I have a feeling this is the student who's gonna be banging their head up against the desk going, I got nothing to do. Or really, I'm not prepared to do that. I got people that every single summer go out and hire 3, 4, 5 in. They know what they're gonna do. They've got the work stacked up and waiting. So I will tell you that whatever you're gonna do, gonna vary, but it will be meaningful. That's our experience. Next question. What about resume? I'm a guy who, for 30+ years, I've been doing nothing but reading resumes and hiring. Got any questions on that stuff?
Is there certain like certifications maybe that you guys would look for, like that stands out, particularly through internships?
Any certification you get while you're still in your academic career, I'm gonna be glad to have. Not because you have it, because it says something about you. You worked harder than your peers. You made an effort. You give a damn. I'm not hiring interns because of all this great experience you have. You don't have any. That's the point of the internship. I want smart. I want the right attitude. I'm here to learn. I can collaborate. I'm a team player. I'm curious. And you can communicate. Because by the way, you can be the smartest person in the room. If you can't communicate, you might as well be the village idiot. Because I'm never going to know it. That's what I'm looking for. And someone come in and bring those. You know, we're not a huge company. We hired 140 people last year. But about 20 of them were former students or interns. And that for us is like high water numbers. For most of them, when I got to Epri, typically what did we hire? We hired somebody who probably had 25 years experience. They were the subject matter experts. They knew everything about this piece of equipment or that part of the grid, and they were coming in to start doing research. By the way, that model is not sustainable. And we realize that. So today, I'm still hiring those people. Brought a guy in from Brazil who probably knows more about hydropower than anybody in the room. Guy's amazing. But he's going to hire some PhDs and some undergrads who are going to learn. We can't just buy talent. You have to build it. So we're there. So that's what I want. Put something on the resume, some sort of certification, great. It shows me you care. You want it.
What percentage of interns, do you turn into full-time employees?
Doing rough math in my head, 15%. When I joined Epri 13 years ago, I could tell you, let me do the math in my head, but no. That was easy. We've really changed on that. I think it's going to continue to trend that way.
When it comes to the doing process, are you guys like, are there actually people looking at our resumes?
Only people. I will tell you this, in my opinion, if companies are using AI for reviewing resumes, they're making a mistake from a process, and I think they're also skating on very thin legal ground. The American Society of Human Resources Management, sure, and I remember it happened, and the U.S. Department of Labor have both said there are very serious concerns about potentially inherent bias in AI for reviewing resumes. I will not rely on that. I have a team of 4 recruiters working with me. We do not use any kind of AI tool in our review process. I read resumes. Everybody here an undergrad? No, no PhD, right? Yeah, they get really out there at not much time in life. Cool.
Okay.
Okay, these guys, okay. Um, one page. That's your resume. Here's my rule. One page per decade. Should never go past 2 pages. If I was gonna write a resume, which, you should always have your resume updated. The word, it's on a computer. I mean, just go in every couple of months and say, hey, did I do anything cool that I should add in my resume? And then edit it down later. But 2 pages. If I had a resume, it would be 2 pages long. I have over 3 decades of experience. No one cares what I did 28 years ago. 34 years ago. 34 years ago, I was a tax consultant. My master's degree from Virginia Tech is in federal tax theory. I'm the accountant other accountants make fun of. No one cares. I haven't been doing that in 30+ years. It's on my resume. It's like this one blurb that explains I used to be an accountant and then I got cool. So that's it. ITP. You guys have a lot of skills. I like to list all the software you've used. Do it as an addendum. I'm fine with that. I want to see specific software, but here's the thing that I get hung up on is that list of softwares. Do you really know everything? Is everything on there something that if I handed you a project and said, you have to use Pikachu to write this code? Can you do it? Now I'd have to go back and look at it. Maybe I don't really remember it that well, but don't have it on your damn resume. By the way, I make that joke, but I remember seeing a presentation where they actually had a whole list of software. And, it was a trick question because it's like, which one of these are softwares, which ones are Pokemon? And the trick question was 2 were actually both. That somebody's named their software package after Pokemon. But addendums are fine. I say the same thing to PhDs. All your research stuff, put it as an addendum. The publication, put it as an addendum. But keep the core resume full page.